I found somebody up in Northern Washington that has one of these, but all he could do was send me these photographs.
Right.
So there is the challenge.
Well, what you're describing, right, taking an object and creating it in 3D space, there might be an easier solution. I use photogrammetry, where you take a bunch of pictures of an object and then it combines all those pictures and generates a 3D mesh. I don't know if you've ever...
I'm very familiar with those things.
Okay.
The problem is many of these things that I know of out there, they're either not available or it's totally inappropriately expensive for solving this job. I'm looking for something that I could...
Have you searched the patent database? They would have schematics. I don't know if they would have pictures.
Many of these farming things are literally they've been developed by local blacksmiths. Those were the makers of the year. All of that was the entry got. Now you say, yeah, but why worry about that old stuff? You know, it's just the soils alone, how they are different across this country or across the world, make a huge impact on implements. Some of these implements only work in a very small part of the country. The guys want to keep them working because they are the best for the environment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's certainly a difficult challenge, I'm sure. I'll try and answer any questions I have or you have. We'll probably get started soon.
Yep.
And it's already streamed. Whenever you're ready, we can.
I'm ready when you guys are.
Hey Mario. Oh, it's getting kind of laggy. It's being kind of laggy. Do you have the password for the more?
Go to user function.
I'm one of the co-founders of CodeRGV. We established this organization about 5 years ago to build better nerds. That was the whole concept. And what that entails is finding people that are really good at stuff, or maybe mediocre, but are willing to talk about it, and putting them in front of everybody and recording what they do and teaching them something you may or may not already know or you may want to learn about. So today's going to be really fun. I wish I could stick around and have another engagement, but you guys are going to learn some really cool stuff. I'm very interested to see how we can turn this into more VR, because we're having so much fun with VR right now. And I don't know if y'all know the scope of everything that CodeRGV does, and I don't want to go into all of it, but right now we've got some cool VR programs where we reach into classrooms and we work with students from elementary school, middle school, and high school levels, and we teach them about new technologies, about virtual reality and programming, robotics, drones, all kinds of neat stuff. So this is a fun way to learn about modeling and how to build some of it. Man, I really wish I could stay and learn this. But just know that we do programs like this on the third Thursday of every month, and there's always beer and pizza, and there's always soft drinks, and we have a good time. We have people who return after we haven't seen them in a long time. We've been doing this for about 5 years, and it's really fun. It's really rewarding. And there's so many absolutely amazing things that our organization is on the cusp of doing right now, and it has been an incredible week for us. Incredible week. We're facing lots of new funding rounds from the Koch brothers in New York, and from a phone call with Facebook this morning, and new partnerships with banks like Vantage Bank, who want us to start our boot camp programs up again. Yes. So we're going to start teaching boot camps to train people how to be certified developers and giving them jobs. Yeah, look forward. Yeah. On the website, CodeRGV.org is usually where we post everything that's on there. We have our event calendar on there, and then Mario's, we're updating everything on Facebook now, and Twitter and Instagram and all that. And then all these videos are recorded, and they're all posted on our YouTube channel. Hello. And so you can watch all the videos of everything that we've done. We had a little bit of a hiatus over the last couple of years, or over the last year, I would say. There's been some ups and downs and changes in the programming that we're doing. But now we're finally getting back on track with everything. There's so many just incredibly amazing things that we're beginning to work on this year that I can't even comprehend all the great stuff that's happening. So. Anyway, so that being said, Mario's always the point of contact with CodeRGV. If y'all need anything, it's Mario at CodeRGV.org or Drew at CodeRGV.org. And with that, have some pizza and make some 3D stuff. Make some cool stuff, and then whatever they make, if they want to put it out, stick it out on our Instagram.
Server, or you can follow that.
Good.
Just tell me what you made them do that.
How many of y'all are on our Slack channel? Up there. So our Slack channel is a channel that we established a couple of years ago. We've got about 1,500 people that are on there. At any given time, there's only about 10 people that really talk and they start arguments and stuff. But it's always informative and good. If you click on the chat part of our website, you can interact with us every single day. There's always someone on there having a conversation about programming language or any technology. And there's always interesting people, like I'll pick on a couple, I have a technology consulting company here in McAllen, and Mario has worked for a museum for a bunch of years, and now he's over here with us at CodeRGV. Javier is one of our instructors who teaches kids how to do a whole bunch of stuff. You're over at Grandview doing amazing things.
Kink is one of our coaches.
I'm getting there. Like this way. You didn't see how I went. No. We have a new program that we're working on with girls who code. So we're teaching a bunch of girls how to program. And did you get the deal today? The registration is open. We're taking the first team from the Rio Grande Valley to compete at Hewlett Packard in Houston in their annual event called Code Wars. We're sourcing the first team ever from the Rio Grande Valley to go up and represent the Rio Grande Valley in this competition for people from all over the United States for the program. And it's all girls. It's going to be super fun, as long as the instructor knows what they're doing. But it's a lot of fun, and we have a good time. So if you guys want to learn more, just join us online. There's a radio station down on the first floor, and so they use tonight to teach kids about radio. There's always something weird happening.
Why do you guys only have things for kids? I want to go see
We don't. Yeah, we do all kinds of stuff. So I'll tell you straight up, we used to, this event on Thursday nights, we used to do it twice a month, the first and third Thursday, and we used to have about 80 people that would show up for
We
this
used to
event.
actually do it in the entire floor over there.
Yep. And then we stopped doing it here, we moved them all to Mission, and everyone quit showing up. And so we moved it back to McAllen, and now it's kind of hit or miss. And so we're working on it, we're trying to rebuild it, that's why we've got great
When you
content.
say you went to Mission, you guys, I don't know.
No, go ahead. Go.
No, it's very not important. I can ask afterwards.
Go ahead, you already started.
So I went to a couple of courses they had, but the one I went to wasn't, I don't think, they were like doing boot camps for like $12,000.
At the seed building.
Yeah.
So we built the seed building.
I went
So they came to us to ask us to build it. We established that building. My company did all the installation for all the technology in there, and that building was built to house CodeRGV. What happened was we had some programs that we produced there, and then they wanted to open it up, and they wanted to try and take on those programs themselves. And we're a little bit more altruistic. Our programs are always free. We always wanted to do stuff for free. They wanted to charge, and so we didn't really see head-to-head with them anymore. So we came back over here where we continue to offer free programs, and they started offering paid-for curriculum over there. So they still have programs that are paid for. They have some free programs that are available, but ours are always, we try and always make it free to everybody that we can. Unless it's a special deal, like Javier teaches Photoshop classes, and we like to make sure that we pay Javier so that he can continue to come back. So we charge a nominal fee that we give to Javier. It's all about that money. Yeah, $20 a person. Like, it's okay, you know, we try and keep it low. But if there's anything that y'all want to learn about, I encourage you to voice that to us, and we'll be happy to put together a class. I do all the wireless hacking stuff. I'm doing some, oh man, I've got some great classes coming up. I'm doing another wireless penetration class where I teach people how to break into cell phones and how to protect yourself against that. I teach a lot of security. We're doing one with Guru McAllen where I'm gonna set up basically a small bedroom on the stage, and I'm gonna load it up with a TV and an Alexa and all this other stuff. I'm gonna show you how to compromise all of that and how to break into all of it, and then how to protect yourself from all of that as well. So it's super fun. I mean, and totally scary to some people.
Yeah, I'm already scared now. So
Oh, it's a blast, dude! It's so much fun. Anyway, I'll shut up so you guys can actually learn something. It's the only problem is I talk too much. Enjoy the pizza. Thank y'all for coming. Peace out. See ya.
All right, so I guess we'll leave it to Gage to tell us what.
Hi, my name's Gage Benham. As Stu said, I'm a lecturer, just kind of a random guy who's passionate about something. And this is something I wanted to share with you guys. Hopefully you find an interest in it too. So, what if it was purple, using Blender for 3D modeling and texture? This question is kind of be the theme of the presentation. I want you to kind of think about it throughout, sort of, and hopefully it will stir some creativity. So when coming up with this presentation, I was thinking, well, how can I break down this fairly complex information into, bite-sized chunks that are more palatable? So I kind of got on YouTube, see what other people were teaching, in that kind of form. And as I usually do on YouTube, I got distracted and started watching clips of the show. Has anyone actually seen the show? No? Well, it's a parody of like a talk show, basically. Whereas usual talk shows kind of make their guests comfortable, he kind of tries to make them as uncomfortable as possible. So there's a clip from the show. But one of the segments on the show was what if it was purple? Where he takes a regular object and he says, what if it was purple? And then he makes it purple and he gets all excited. And I was like, well, how can I apply that in 3D modeling? So here's some context. Say you're given this picture for a client or something. You're fairly happy with it. You go into Photoshop. You're just lighting the levels, whatever. Looks nice to you, and then you give it to the client, and they're like, "Well, what if it was purple?" So you have to go back through Photoshop, mask around the edges, make the wall purple to the client's liking, and that's time-consuming. Frankly, it looks kind of flat because it's not really purple. It's photoshopped to look purple, and you can see that here. That reflective surfaces aren't actually purple as they should be. When you have a bright light in the room, they tend to bleed onto especially white surfaces. So we can see none of that bleeding occurring because it's not actually there. Whereas in a 3D context, this is done almost instantaneously. So with everything 3D, you can just go real time and just change the color of the wall, change the location of objects, and we'll see that the result is much better. I think it looks a lot more vibrant, and it certainly has more life to it. So again, reflective surfaces kind of bleed in with that color, same for the walls and the floor. And that's why Hollywood loves CGI so much, is that they have so much control over this 3D environment. So here we can see a 3D render of a plane, and we get multiple passes of it. It's also very cheap compared to, if you're trying to create that practical props and stuff, that would be very expensive, and you would only be able to get that one shot, right? Because after that, it's destroyed. Whereas in 3D space, you can run it several times, you can change the settings of the simulation, you have a lot more control. Again, you have a lot more control, it can be viewed from different angles, and very few limitations. So maybe in this instance, it could be created practically, but you've seen maybe Doctor Strange or big CGI movies, you know that some things are just impossible to recreate practically. So this is where 3D renders and this engine comes in. So programs. Obviously, you have to use a program to create something in 3D. The industry standards as of now is 3ds Max, which we talked about, and Substance Painter, which is used for texturing, and Houdini, which is used for rendering. And however, you can find all of these capabilities inside Blender. And whereas these programs can run up to $5,000 per year because they are professional programs, Blender is free. It will always be free. It was founded on the principle that it will be free forever. So that's why I'm a fan of it. I hope you guys will be too. So my experience with Blender, here's some that I made. As he was talking about transforming 3D or physical objects in the real world to a 3D model can be challenging. So I took pictures of myself and was able to bring it into Blender and do some nice renders with it. And this was also a model I did. I was a camp counselor over the summer, and during that camp, the kids would have a session for art. And one of the kids really loved video games, and he started drawing all these concept characters for video games, right? So, as someone who's passionate about video games, and I love seeing kids passionate about something, I took his concept and kind of put it into a 3D model, and he really liked that. And it was very easy to do with Blender. The next example is kind of a test and animation. It's very simple. You just kind of have this 3D text that pops out of the screen. But again, it's showing how Blender is fairly versatile. Here is something I did for my organization. I'm the president of IEEE. And this was for our video game tournament. And you can see we have two kind of video game characters fighting each other. It was a promotional piece. But what's interesting about it is it's this image, well, the original image, was rendered in 18K. And I don't know about you guys, but that is a very large image. So even if I drew it traditionally or did it in Photoshop, that would take a lot of processing power. But because it was a Blender, it was fairly easy to render, and I was able to blow it up to this huge poster that I could take pictures with and enjoy. And here's another example that I did for my organization. It was just a little intro piece that kind of showed our logo and I guess made us look cool. So Trump, as you guys noticed, there's a picture of Trump. And this was probably the biggest project I've worked on, and I think the most challenging. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not a big fan of Trump, but he has a very distinguishable face. Even at like a very simplistic view, you can tell who that is, right? So I was thinking, well, even if I butcher it completely and I can't capture his resemblance, you'll still be able to tell it's him. So I went through the process. I did an initial sculpt. I then applied a material to his face, so you see the skin has this kind of what's called subsurface scattering, where it kind of glows behind the skin. I applied the texture, and I was messing with his hair. His hair was so hard, you guys. Like right here, it's like a strawberry. I don't even know what. It was really difficult to nail. I get a little closer, I think, with the colors, but the hair just doesn't look right. And as I'm going through, these are all the files, right? So these are the iterations I'm going through over time. And eventually end up with something like this, which I think is pretty good. But what's nice about this, in 3D context, I can ask, okay, what if it was purple? So I can make it gold, or I can give him, crazy hair. So there's a lot of creative freedom that you have once you have something in a 3D space. So here are the basic, building blocks of 3D modeling. You have your vertices, which are your smallest point. They exist on one axis, so you see the x-axis here. And you can't really do much with a vertice until you add another one, in which case you get an edge, and you start to build upon these atom. And you start to build upon your 3D materials, I guess, or toolkit. And then you add another vertex in another dimension, and now you have a face. And out of these faces, you can start to construct a 3D model. So textures are what we apply to a 3D model that allow us to, change how they look. There's several different types of textures. We have a diffuse texture, a specular texture, a normal texture, and displacement textures. I'll go over these a little later during the actual follow along, but just so you have an idea of what textures can do. Here we see a model without any texture, right? It's blank. And then we see the textured model, which has all the colors and whatnot. And then we have materials. Materials are kind of synonymous with textures. They go hand in hand. Here we have the textures up top and the materials down here. And textures kind of control how much of a material there is. So we have a metalness map, which kind of controls, okay, what part of this final image is going to look metal, right? So you can see these darker parts are plastic, whereas the whiter part. We also have a roughness map, so it's kind of flipped in this case, but the darker areas kind of control how shiny it is, whereas the lighter areas are rope and other diffuse materials. And then things get a little bit difficult when we think about how do we take a texture, which is 2D, and we apply it to a 3D model, right? So the trick is that we actually take our 3D model and flatten it to 2D. So here's a 3D model, for instance, and we switch down and make sure that all the faces are on the two dimensions, and then we can apply the texture, which is really terrifying. And yeah, so that's how we are able to project that 3D texture onto a 3D image. And here's some examples of UV maps. So if you think about it, the globe, how would you stretch that out, right? How would you make that 2D? You kind of have to split it down the middle and then just unravel it. Same thing with the box. You kind of have to cut it along the edges and then just unravel it inward. And topology is kind of in reference to UV maps. It refers to the flow of a mesh. So here we can see bad topology. If you were to try and split this and lay it flat, obviously it wouldn't look very nice. Whereas good topology, it's very clean. You can see a very even split down the middle, which should be unraveled, like an orange or however you want to think about it. Okay, so right now we're going to go over how to make something similar to this. I've done a fair amount of the work for you, just so you complete the loss, but I'll go over a lot of the basics in depth for you. So if you want to follow along with the tutorial, these are the required files. That's the link. I don't know if you guys can see that. You can do it right over here.
Is that after the 2, is that a 0 or no?
Okay, it's 2V.
Oh, V.
Sorry. I can try and load up if you want. I'm going to write it on the Word document and blow it up a little bit. Let's see. So there should be 2 folders there. Go ahead and download both of them. There's blend files and textures.
Is that everything caps except the K, or doesn't matter?
The K is not capitalized, but I'm not sure if it matters. I would try it uncapitalized first.
I think it matters since I did all lowercase a little while ago.
Are you guys having trouble finding it?
Alright.
Little K.
Yeah, this month.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you guys get it, or do you the I is uppercase. It kind of looks like an L, but it's I-L, lowercase k n.
So, both folders, blended files, are done already.
Yeah, we'll be using both folders in this case. Is everyone ready to go? So go ahead and open up tutorial.blend. It should be in the Blender files folder. Tutorial.blend, go ahead and open that file, and it's going to be in the Blender files. Is everyone there, or do you need help? So when you open it up, you should see something similar to this. Does everyone see that, or is it not? Okay, it is purple. Okay, that's good. If you guys have a purple background, it's because you're missing a texture. That's why you need the texture folder. If you want to hide it for now, you can go to display and unclick world background, and that will just get rid of that. Okay. So it's going to be display on this little menu right here, and world background. So you see when I click it, it shows the background. Does anyone need help? Alright, so I'm going to go through the interface briefly and just show you around, I guess. So right here, this is your outliner. Does anyone still need a link, or can I erase it? You good? So this is your outline. Basically, it shows everything in your 3D view, right? So you can either select things in your 3D view with the, it's going to be the right mouse button. It's kind of weird. I know people are used to all that, so it's going to be the right mouse button. So you can select things and you'll see that it's outlined in, I think yours looks different. It's probably orange, right? Okay. You can select them there, or you can select them in your outline. This shows all the objects in your scene if they're not visible here. And to make an object visible, you click on this little eyeball right here. So you see, as I hide this, it disappears from my view, but I can still click it inside my outline. There are several different types of rendering when it comes to the view. You can go down here and change it to wireframe, and I'll show you kind of the basic meshes, right? So you just get an outline of all your objects in the scene. There's also a solid, which you see a texture, but because we don't have any texture right now, it's not going to show anything. Same thing goes for materials. And then rendered, I would advise clicking on it because it does take a lot of processing power just for right now. But as you can see, it looks, I want to say, more realistic, right? The lighting looks more realistic. And that's because it's simulating probably thousands, if not millions, of particles of light. And that's what that pixelation you see is. It's sending particles of light and seeing where it bounces off. But for right now, we're just going to be in the solid view. So as far as navigation goes, it's kind of hard to remember. There's several shortcuts you need. You see me rotating around a lot. The way to do that is to click down on your middle mouse button, and that should allow you to kind of rotate your scene. Your middle mouse button, your scroll wheel, sorry. And that allows you to rotate your scene around. And then to zoom in and out, you can scroll on your scroll wheel. So that lets you zoom and kind of rotate your scene. In order to pan, you're going to need to hold Shift and the middle mouse wheel. Right? So whereas rotate is the middle mouse wheel by itself, holding Shift and the middle mouse wheel will allow you to pan around your scene. And that's pretty much all you need to know. It might feel a little awkward at first, but after a while you kind of get used to it and can navigate fairly easily. There's also some shortcuts for views. So if I hit 1 on the keyboard, it kind of centers to the front. So I hit 3, it centers to the side. 5 makes it what's called orthographic view. Whereas,
you don't have to press anything on it.
That's the number pad.
Yeah, if you don't have a number pad, it might not work. I'm not sure. Yeah, okay. So you won't be needing this, but if you see me, like if you see it change suddenly, that's all it is. It comes in handy, but again, not necessary. And then to create an object. So if you have anything selected, like anything's outlined, go ahead and press A. That will deselect everything. The A button on your keyboard, that will deselect everything. Pressing A again will select everything. So you see, once I highlight everything with A, I can also deselect it with A again.
What are the different colors? Do they mean anything, or is that just
I want to say there is a meaning. I think sometimes it has to depend on what type of object it is. In 3D environment, like you'll see, this is not actually a 3D model. It's considered a curve. And I'll go into that a little bit more in depth, but yeah, I think if anything is a different color, it doesn't really matter. It won't affect your ability to follow along. Okay, so A selects everything and deselects everything. Shift A will create something. So Shift A again. And you'll see all these options for objects you can create. I'll click on the monkey because that's like the mascot for Blender. And you can, I don't think we'll be creating anything. We're just going to be kind of texturing and moving stuff around. But if you want to add anything to your scene, go ahead. Okay, so moving on, we have our properties. And these are, I guess, characteristics of each object, right? So if I click on this one, you can see all these things pop up. Here's the materials tab. We have I don't use this word, yes, okay. Here you can create vertex groups, which we won't cover, but and the modifiers. So for now, all you need to really worry about are these two tabs. It's got a little wrench, and it's got a little ball with a textured pattern on it. So these are the kind of the main tabs we'll be using for now. And here I'll move on to another window. By the way, if you want to expand upon windows or collapse them, it's fairly easy. You just hover over the barrier or the separation, and it'll give you this nice little arrow that you can drag up and down. You can also collapse this for now because we won't be using it. If your viewport, for any chance, looks like this or something, like don't freak out. I know using Blender for the first time, like I just played around with it basically, and I could never figure anything out because my viewport looked like this. So to collapse windows, you just drag on this little striped area. It's kind of hard to see on the screen, but there's a little striped corner here, and you just drag and close your windows. And that's also how you create and split windows. So here I'm creating another 3D window. And to control what type of window it is, here are all your options. So in the left corner, you'll see all the type of windows. So for this project, we'll be using a UV image editor, and we'll be using the node editor. Does anyone need help?
So you want us to open both of those?
Yes, so you should have a split here, like in the middle. If you don't, again, you can just click on this corner and split. Right. And then once you split it, you can select what type of window you want. Does anyone need help?
Yeah, how do you go back?
Back is Control Z.
Back and up?
Control Z, where you. So that little shape here, like stripes, yeah. The stripes. There, if you want. Oh, did it not open by default? Or can you go back? Yeah, so you just double click on the file and it will open on the It's okay. You can do it that way. You can go to File, Open. And then open it from there, or you can just double click on the file itself and open the file. Let's go to your file.
frustration with learning piece of software. I mean, I know, someone be working in AutoCAD or Fusion 360, it's like, why do you do all this stuff? I'm missing all that.
Tutorial 1, or you have 3 seconds. Okay, so the on the
I understand the technology and all that, but my artisticness, is such a word, doesn't quite lend itself to that.
Yeah,
I'm not involved with the physical world, and I'll have to solve actual problem. People have a real engineering problem that they can't spend thousands of dollars to solve. How are we going to do this? Diligently. Okay. It's a problem. It's not that they're averse to technology. But you can figure out that. It's principally so. The vast majority of my customers, it's not my customers are, and it's not that they're just sitting in their ways or this, that, and the other thing. They like sounds like it wants to just tweeting and put it. Other
So you have 2 windows and some green, awesome. Change the type of windows and go to that little box.
This is especially true
And then
for
it goes into the
the phone.
Alright, is everyone on the same page? Roughly? Okay, cool.
But it's, there's a difference between these really wild concepts and it's non-defined.
Alright. So, is anyone lost? Like completely lost? Do they need help? Okay. Alright, we'll keep going then. So for now, this is supposed to be the CodeRGV logo, but can anyone tell me what's wrong with it? Anyone?
It's not a purple.
Well, one thing, there's supposed to be 3 laptops on top. There's supposed to be 3 laptops on top, right? So you have one on this side, one in the middle, and one on this side. But as of now, there's only 2. So we're going to have to add another one. And we can either create it from scratch, or we can use a modifier, which is a nice little tool in Blender. So go ahead and select the laptop on the right here. Right click. It's kind of confusing, but right click is your select button.
It's not selecting.
It's the same.
It's just giving you that, like, target point. Yeah.
Right click, this one.
I think control right click. That works.
Okay. Okay.
Are you left clicking?
Oh, I don't know if I decided something.
It's okay. It's okay. It's your natural response, because everything else you double click with the left button, right? So right or left clicking will put this little cursor thing around. Right clicking will actually select your object.
No, I closed.
My highlighted, but it's orange. Is that an issue?
No, that's just a theme that I have. So,
This is
we're able to select it. more confusing, right? Does anyone need help? Are you good?
Like this doesn't select nothing.
So yeah, you have something selected. No, is it right now? Yeah, you have to select a lot.
Oh, okay.
Object mode allows you to select objects. Edit mode, you're able to select.
Inside that, okay.
That's how you make it. For right now, we're just going to be object mode. If you're unable to select objects, make sure that you're in object mode, because edit mode will just allow you to select stuff on your object, right? You won't be able to select other objects. So make sure you're in object mode. So once you're in object mode, go ahead and select this right laptop. One by one. And then you're going to go down to your properties window right here and select this little, I guess, wrench. And these are your modifiers. So we're going to add a mirror modifier. Do I need to do that again? Super so much. Okay. Go here, properties, right? You got all these tabs. You're going to select this wrench. It's a blue wrench. Then you go add modifier. You're going to look for mirror. Yeah, I mean, is everyone here? Did they get their mirror going? Yes. Okay. So we're gonna go ahead and click on this mirror modifier. What that did is create a mirror object of our laptop, but we don't see it yet, right? In order to do that, we need a object to mirror it across. And since this other laptop's in the center, we can use that as our mirror object, right? So let's go here and click on main laptop. So you're going to go to mirror objects, which is this little box right here. its main laptop. And then it should create a duplicate laptop across on the other side of the main laptop, right? Does everyone see that? Awesome. Okay, so that looks pretty good. We have our 3 laptops, but as you can see, some of this mesh from one of the laptops is kind of overlapping the other laptop, right? So we kind of want to get rid of that. The easiest way to do that is to cut it out, right? And there's another modifier that we can use to do that. So we'll go to the modifiers tab, right, again, and we'll click Boolean modifier. Is everyone there? So again, add modifier Boolean. It's going to be at the top right here. All right, awesome. And what this basically does is it can either add to a mesh, cut from a mesh, or so you see the operations here. So difference. The difference is our cutting tool, right? So when you select difference, we'll select one object, and we'll say, okay, what's the difference between this object and this object? And we'll get rid of that difference. And that's what we're going to do in this case. So what difference we want is basically this area right here where the laptop is. And I've created another object called, let's see where it is. It's called mask. You can't see it right now because it's hidden, but if I unhide it, you'll see that it's basically a square that's going to cut out the area that we want to cut out, right? And we're going to use that as our difference object. So we'll go to operation, difference, object, mask. Okay? Do I need to do that again? Yeah. Okay. Operation, we're under the Boolean modifier, right? So here's our mirror modifier. Here's our Boolean modifier. We're going to go operation, this little operation tab, difference, and then object is going to be mask. And when we do that, we should see those edges that were kind of overlapping here disappear, right? Is everyone there? Do you need help? Do you want me to do it again? Okay.
So right after you press the difference, you just have to press max.
No. Well, yeah.
There's 2 things here.
Yeah, there's 2 tabs that you
See
should
the
click
light
on.
the difference.
Alright. Did you say you needed help back there? Okay. Do you want me to come to you or do it up here again?
Yeah, I want to press that one.
Yes. And then I'll tell you, yeah, you do all this inside this 2 area.
All that is
I have a web server and a desktop computer. Switch to Q
all right. All right, so is everyone at this point? Oh, sorry. So is everyone here? Awesome. Now we're going to work our way down. You'll notice that this is missing the code part of the logo. So I actually have So for reference, this is what we're trying to make roughly, right? So right now we don't have this part done. That's what we're going to work on next. So these laptops were created by hand, but we can also create geometry with textures, which I talked about earlier in the presentation. But before we can get textures on our 3D object, what do we need to remember? To put a 2D image onto a 3D object, we need the map, the UV maps, right? So we need to create a UV map for this object here. In order to do that, we'll need to go to edit mode. So click on this little tab here, edit mode. You'll see that all of the faces are selected. We don't really want that. So deselect it, put A, right? So that's how we deselect everything. And we're gonna swap to edge select.
You want to deselect all of it and then go to edge.
Edge select. So right now we're in face select. So remember how I talked about our basic building blocks of 3D models? We have edges, faces, and vertices. Right now we're in face select mode. We want to be in edge select mode. And to get into edge select mode, there's a little box right here. So we're just going to click on that, and now we can select the edges.
These 3 little boobies.
Yeah, there's little, I guess, widgets down here. So they change the selection mode. So the edge select mode is the middle box right here. Once we do that, we can select our edges. Does anyone know?
No, it's not like mode. It is mode. You select it.
Oh yeah, you're on the wrong object. So right now you're on this. So the box. So if you're on another object, okay. So if you're unable to select your box, it may be because you selected the wrong object, right? So remember how we could select our objects over here? If you're unable to click on your edges, make sure that you're selecting this cube. Okay. So you'll see that if something's selected, it'll highlight this little icon here, and then I can edit that object. So right now we want the cube to be highlighted.
What's the magic source?
We have it selected when we went to edit mode. You have to deselect it after we go to edit mode. And then when we come up with this, we can see that it's selected. That was it. It was already selected. We just couldn't see it because the object was selected. Okay, so
Oh,
it was like this, right? And then we had it.
Does anyone need help?
Oh, my computer just died.
Sorry.
There's 25 minutes, yeah, I look at these. No, I went to learn my computer. Oh, okay. Oh, that's yours?
Yeah, you have it.
Oh, okay.
Right? Whereas when we figure it out, it's just outlines. So you can see it.
Okay.
It's from here. Oh, CodeRGV? Okay, yeah. I didn't know they provided computers. Yeah, because I tried downloading later, but it wouldn't download. I didn't know the problem with it.
No, you're good.
Like these computers, we can take them home and like bring them back whenever. So, yeah, I know.
It is highlighted.
mine.
It's not as
That's it,
bright.
mine home.
So, that's just the thing. We create. Yeah. Real nice. Does anyone else need help? Good. Okay, so right, so you are in the right, but you're not on the right object. So
You're not on the right what?
object.
I just
Yeah,
got
so
one, two, three.
The fact that it looks like you used to use oh,
So right now you've selected the laptop. Right? You want to be on this spot. So we can go and yeah, start in the middle. So now we can draw in. Is everyone here? Are we good to go? Alright, so once you're in edit mode, it's time to start creating our UV map. And we'll do that by selecting the seams or the edges that we want to basically split our 3D model on, right? We're making it flat, so we need to cut it so that we can lay it flat. So we're gonna go ahead and select this top seam right here, this one. Shift select this side seam or seam and this bottom seam. Alright? So you're selecting multiple seams.
Okay. Shift and select. You want the right, the bottom, and the.
So you want the top,
Okay.
the right, and the bottom. Just imagine this is where we're going to cut our box so that we can fold it over. Is everyone there?
oh,
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say. So you have all three selected.
basically.
If you guys are having trouble selecting, you can turn off this option over here. This allows you to see the edges in the back, right? So now I can see through the box. If I turn this off, it hides them until I want to see them. And that's right here next to the selection. Yeah, if your toolbar is missing stuff, just make sure it's slid all the way to the right. Is everyone at this point? Good. Alright, so we have this side selected, but if you think about it, if I was just to rip off the side and lay it flat, the rest of the mesh, or the rest of the 3D model would still be sticking out, right? So we need to lay it completely flat. So we need to make more selections. This bottom edge right here, we need to select that one too. So shift select that one. And now you see we have 1, 2, 3, 4 edges selected. Yeah, you might have selected one by accident. If you did, that's okay. You can just press A again, remember? A deselects everything, and then you just select it again. Okay, so you imagine it it's kind of hard to imagine. We're not there yet, but I'll show you. Once it's unfolded, you'll see it on the side, and it'll be easier.
Tell us again real quick. Which way you want to go?
So imagine this space. That face is going to be facing the
Yeah, okay.
and this space is also.
Oh, okay. Okay. Got it.
All right. So I had a question about how this is actually going to unfold. And if it's easier for you to visualize, just think of this face kind of unwrapping and laying on its back. So this face is going to face the ground. So it's this face and this face as well. But it might just be easier to visualize once we unwrap it. So I'm going to select these again. Select the bottom one. And we're going to do the same selection on this side. So the top, the front, and the bottom. Right? So once it's completely selected, you should see something like this. And if you misselect one, say I select the top one by accident, you can unselect it by shift clicking again. Right. Is everyone here? No? Anyone? Alright, I think we're good. We're going to go ahead and unwrap it. Take a moment. Right. Click Control E. Yes. Control E. And then mark C. Control E, that'll bring up this menu right here. And you'll see an option here that says mark C. Go ahead and do that. You'll see that our seams are now outlined in a different color, hopefully. The ones that we're going to unfold on. Once that's done, we'll select everything. So our whole box is highlighted. And we select everything with A. Right? A selects everything. Right? Once our seams are highlighted in this color, it will select everything. Make sure that your seams are still highlighted when this is completely selected, right?
Okay,
What would you do?
when I press A, the color changed to red, but only the edges. It was orange before, even though I put mark C. Yeah. So after I did mark C, it looked like my orange was still there, and then when I pressed A, it turned red, and they're the ones that are marked.
Yeah. So press A. So yeah, nice. Okay, yeah, that's my bad. If you already have seams selected, for instance, if I have the seam selected, it's just going to deselect that seam, or seam, right? So I have to press A twice in order to select the whole thing. Okay, so with the whole thing selected and our seams highlighted, we're going to unwrap it. So to unwrap it, we're going to press U on the keyboard. U, and then unwrap. Something went wrong. Give me a second. Okay, yeah, that's my bad. So make sure that you're not on render result, because that's a different thing. I won't explain it, but make sure that you're just on this blank tile, and you'll see your unwrapped box. Does everyone have that? So that's our UV map, right? So it's a little more simple than the one I showed earlier, but it does effectively the same thing.
I think you can answer it. Yours, one of the squares is unhighlighted, and so is his. All of mine are highlighted.
I don't think that's a problem. As long as you see all the squares there.
Just a lot of pizza, guys. If you want more, do more.
Yeah, so that just means.
Sure.
As long as the container ain't open, right?
It doesn't really mean anything. I actually don't know why it doesn't highlight it, even though it's highlighted here. But as long as all the squares show up, you're good to go.
We don't have a place, or I don't have a place for the squares to show up, and they don't show up.
Okay. Well, I had that issue too. Make sure you're not in. Oh, you don't have a place, like you don't have a window, like that.
Correct.
Okay.
I think
So
correct.
to create a window, it's kind of hard to see. Let's minimize this a little bit. So there's this little dashed line at the bottom. Do you see that?
He has his, whatchamacallit, the middle display one still open. If you close that one. Yeah, no, you had it like that.
Small file.
Yeah, small, close it all the way. You get that little thing, and then you can separate it. You see that little texture thing right there?
There.
No, above it.
The triangle.
Yeah, and pull it. Right, and then you go here. And then you have to do the interior.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, it's not coming in, but when I rotate this item, see that then all these are coming. That's right. So it's definitely
Back here.
What did you do?
A, just select those. So when it's highlighted here,
Before it would.
Now I deselected everything.
Alright. So we've created our UV map successfully, hopefully.
It does have a difference in the texture and the coloration still. Yeah.
Does everyone have something similar to this? Yeah, so you just created too many windows. Sorry. So whenever you want to create or close a window, you can move it to so if I click on this, I put it on this and I want to close it that way. I'm just going to squish it. And that closes it. And those are our windows we need. Again, to show. Do marker C? I'm not going to put this again. Shift left. Select everything again. Sorry. There you go. No, you gotta unwrap it first. So you gotta press U, unwrap, and then it should show up. Alright, so I think we're almost ready to start applying a texture to it. To add our texture, we need to change our render. For some reason, settings differ between renders. It doesn't make any sense to me, but it's just the way we've got to do it. So you're going to go up here to Cycles Renderer and switch to Blender Renderer. Okay. Not much change, but you will see over here we can add. Okay, so once you do that, is everyone there? Or Blender Renderer? Go to Object Mode, and
Does it matter if it's highlighted or not?
it shouldn't.
And it's still in edit mode, right? Go up to object mode.
Give me a second, I'm having some technical difficulties. Oh, yeah. Did anyone see that? Okay, so this option wasn't there before. This little texture tab. Does anyone have that? So that's important. That's how we import our texture. And remember, we downloaded 2 folders, one for textures and.
Oh, no, actually.
Okay. Does anyone need help? So all we did was we changed the renderer from Cycles to Blender. And then this little texture tab should show up.
Okay.
I don't know why it is that way. Honestly, it should stay the same between renders, but that's the way it works, I guess.
I'm on Blender Renderer and I don't want it.
Yeah, it wasn't showing up for me. That's why I was very confused just now. So, let's see what I can do.
Do I have to be not sure for the report?
So yeah, I think switching from texture to solid for some reason. It's very odd. It just pops up. So that's where we import our texture. That allows us to do this. If this texture box isn't showing up, click on this. I think for some reason it shows up. Does everyone have this box now? Okay. So from this box, we can open a new texture. And we're going to click on New. Does everyone see that? If you have something like this where it doesn't say New, just click on this little X, and that will get rid of your default texture. And then we're going to import the texture we want. So to do that, we're going to go New Texture, and then scroll down and open. Is anyone stuck? Okay. So once you click Open, you should get a file open dialog. I'll go ahead and find. Okay. So wherever you downloaded your texture files. So for me, I didn't download it because it was already on my computer. But if you downloaded it, go to your Code Academy folder and textures, and it should be this texture. It's not going to show up because it's
Displacement?
Yes, you want the displacement texture. So open that file, and it should show up in your. Okay, so for me, it's slightly different. It's going to be under Code Academy, textures, displacement. curiosity, does this show up on your guys'? Yeah. Okay. So click on this little picture icon and select that. You should see something like this. Maybe. Okay. It's going to be slightly different for me because I'm not using downloaded files, right? These are files that are directly on my computer.
It's not in his preview either.
Mm-hmm.
So,
But the thing is, okay,
Okay. If you're not, so does this what?
oh, I got it.
Yeah.
If you click on displacement.png.001, then I got it. But it's like black or
Yeah.
gray, not
So-
white. Yeah.
So it's going to look like this.
Oh, yeah.
It's an alpha image.
Crazy,
So it's an alpha image, meaning that there is transparency in the back. And since the lines are black, you effectively have black on black, which you can see here.
yeah.
So that's why you can't see it here. But if you go to use alpha and unclick that, it gets rid of that transparency. Yeah, so that's, sorry for the confusion, but that's what it should look like. This is our texture that we're going to use, and it should show up here as well. Does everyone have that? Yeah, we're good? Awesome. So we're going to go back. We're going to select our main box here again, and go to edit mode. Does anyone need help? Okay. Did you open the file from? Okay. There. And did you enter that? So again,
you did that before and it didn't do right.
Yeah, but you had it on displacement instead of texture here. At the top, you had it on
Oh, okay,
displacement.
the source.
No, I'll
Yeah.
go up
yeah.
here. It was on displacement and not texture.
You,
Okay.
I can try and fix it. Honestly, that doesn't matter. Yeah, as long as it's not there, that's what we're going to Alright. So, is everyone at this point? They have their cube selected and they're in edit mode. So again, select the cube, go to edit mode. These are seams, that's good. We're going to select this again completely. Is everyone here? Okay, so we see our UV map here, we see our completely selected cube. Now we're going to apply our texture, right? So select this button here and then go to display. Did everyone get that?
So you have that entire thing selected in edit mode, and then you go to the left.
Yeah, in our UV image editor window, right? We're in our UV image editor window. We're going to click on this icon where it displays all our textures that are in the file, and we're going to click on displacement, which is the texture we just did. Is it showing up now?
This, like this.
So we've effectively applied our texture by telling the computer, okay, associate this texture with this UV map, right? So now that that UV map is on top of the texture, we can go to the texture viewport, right? So now we're in solid, no texture, texture viewport. We'll see our texture, but it's in the wrong spot, at least for me. It may be different for you guys, but that's effectively saying, okay, your UV map is not matching your texture. And you can see if I move my UV map around, it moves my texture. So we need to make sure that our UV map matches our texture.
Wait, how did you get code on the right?
On the right, to the left. Over here or over here? Okay, so as long as your left looks like this, does your left look like that, similar?
We're missing a step to stick what's on the left onto the right.
Is your viewport shading in solid or texture mode?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay. Is everyone good? Okay. Awesome. So now we can see our texture is on the mesh, right? Our 3D object, but it's not in the spot we wanted. So it may be different for you, but you can see mine is sort of shifted down. This T section should be up here where this T section is. In order to move it, I'm going to press G. And you see, once I press G, I'm able to move this whole UV map around wherever I want it. And that will also move the texture around on our 3D object. Now, to get it precisely up there, we're going to press G, and then I think it's Y. Yeah. G and then Y, that only allows us to move it on the Y axis.
Okay.
So, did everyone get that? G, Y, and then we're going to align map with our UV or our texture, right? Now we can see that our code lines up properly.
Yes, again, if it's go, but working on it, is that there? Control V.
We have everything set. Yeah,
Sometimes the selection on the side is too bad. It's so
now it's selected, you know it's selected because it's on the selection. We're going to press B. And shift it up. And see the change in there. Well, I mean, truthfully, this is a very so we're actually going to get more than any. So I don't know if you want to keep following along on this laptop or just on.
There's a
Being selected. It showed up on the back of this, right? But it's not selected, and it's only this line that's selected. So whenever we move it, only this is shifted.
In that case, go ahead and press Remember, A selects everything in your
And
way.
then G.
Okay.
And then G is move it up. And then Y is move it on.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I think.
Yeah, so if you ever have something that's not completely selected, just make sure that you press
Okay.
and then if you rotate your 3D object around, you should
It's on the white spot there. Cool.
Alright. So are we all at this point, roughly? Awesome. Okay. So we can view it like that. It looks fine, honestly. If you want it kind of flat, you'll notice that in the actual presentation. So in the presentation, you see that the letters kind of stick out a little bit more. And that's what I was talking about, how we can create 3D meshes with textures. We can effectively modify how the object looks in a 3D space with only flat 2D texture. And to do that, we're going to go back to our model. We're going to add another modifier, but this time make sure that your box is selected. So we're in object mode, our box is selected, and we're going to add another modifier.
You just select the front screen.
Just select this box, right? Make sure that's the only thing selected. So you'll know it's selected by it has a little highlight next to its name. Once this is selected, we're going to add another modifier. Again, the modifiers tab is this little blue wrench on this properties window. We're going to go here, click the modifiers tab, then displacement, which is over here. Everyone find it? Okay, go ahead and click that, and it's not really going to do anything yet. So again, modifiers tab.
If you want to scroll, it's not in the gray area. Scroll up.
Yeah.
Anything hides.
There are a lot of hidden stuff. Yeah. So make sure you can click on the add modifiers. We're going to add the displacement modifier, which is up here under deform, displace. Click that. It's not going to do anything yet because we need to make some adjustments in the settings. So let's see. Is everyone here? We're going to select our texture that we created, the displacement, under this texture option, displacement. And then texture coordinates, we're going to use UV, which is that UV map we created. And you'll see that should change the way your object looks. Not how we really want it, but it's actually displacing our object. Is everyone there?
Yeah.
Okay, well, first switch to object mode. And, there we go. Yeah, that's right.
Is it stuck if you miss a stick? Or some
No, yours looks good. It just looks different from mine. You have the same thing, so. Well, yeah, so under UV map, we're going to select the UV map that we created. By default, UV map. long as it's G shape or not. It didn't look like that originally, so that's good sign. No, you're on the right track. Well, first texture. And then the second option, you're going to click on that. And select your displacement texture.
This part here?
Yes. And displacement.
Oh, okay.
Good. So that's not really doing anything as of yet, but we need to add another modifier. So how the displacement modifier works is it takes a texture and it displaces the faces of your mesh. But because we only have, 6 faces, it can't displace individual faces along the lettering. So what we have to do now is add more faces to our mesh. This does take quite a lot of processing power, not too much, but if your computer starts to chug, slow down. Don't worry about following along. This part isn't really necessary. I just want to show you how you can use textures to create depth in your objects. Okay, so we're going to add another modifier and go to subdivision surface. And that should, when I switch to wireframe, you'll see that it's added quite a few more faces to our mesh, right? Whereas we used to have 6, we have, I don't know how many. You also need to make sure that you're in simple mode, not cat mode Clark.
Yeah, I know. So I can't see.
Do you need me to go over that again?
So, simple.
Okay.
Yeah, so okay, we're gonna add modifier, subdivision surface, and then if you scroll down, if it's not showing up, make sure you scroll down because it might be hidden. And then you'll see there's 2 modes. We have cat mole Clark, I don't know what that is. It effectively rounds it out, and then simple where it's kind of more square. Right? What we're going to do now is up the amount of subdivisions. So you'll see right now it kind of cut our faces in half or in quarters. So it increased the amount of faces we have. If we up the amount of subdivisions, it cuts it again. I'm going to cut it up to 6 times, right? So now we have a bunch of faces that we can use for our displacement.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, you really? Oh, it's what I left and the right now. Okay.
Do you guys need help? Yeah. Again, we're effectively doubling. I don't want to say the amount of computing that's going on, but certainly we're increasing the processing that this takes because we have to draw all these lines, right? So it's taking more computer power. Again, so if your computer starts to slow down at any point, feel free to just watch. This part isn't super necessary, but I just want to show it. So yeah, we're at 6 subdivisions in our view. We should have a lot of tiny little squares, and that means we kind of split our mesh so that we're able to use our displacement texture, which we have up here. So looks the same kind of, but hopefully, yeah. So if it's not showing up yet, you need to move your subsurf or your subdivision surface on top of your displacement, meaning that it will apply the subdivision surface before it applies the displacement. So it creates more faces, and then it displaces those faces using the extra faces you created. So this is kind of the hierarchy, if you want to think about it that way. subsurf is at the top, displacement is at the bottom. And again, to move it up or down, you just click on these arrows. So if we have displacement at the top, we'll see that nothing's really happening, but if we have it at the bottom, you should see the texture displacing our mesh. Does everyone see that?
No, but once we do 6, you just move it up, right? You don't do anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, we see displacement in there. What do we see as well?
Maybe that your textures in texture is in the right spot, so it recognizes that texture is there. And how it works is it takes the darker areas and pushes them out or pushes them in. That is, yeah, that picture actually.
That's uneven.
So maybe you do inverts. Cynthia, does yours look like mine or
Looks pretty
so odd?
I could do something very simple.
It
Press the
probably
buttons.
is,
Skip step or something. But
might even be like, yeah, I'm on PC, but it does seem to have all of the stuff. Check my settings and make sure that the line is a bit. Is your direction on normal?
Direction on normal.
Yes. What I am noticing is your texture seems to be black, whereas mine is.
Yeah, the displacement has
Right.
an image yours and mine doesn't.
So let's try and
I
figure
tried
out.
the texture earlier, but it didn't show up. It only showed up on displacement.
So if you go to your texture, does it look like this? Your texture tab right here.
Preview.
Yeah. Or is it black? It looks like this? No, it's black. Do you have this unchecked? You do. If I uncheck it, it looks a lot like yours, right? So you sure?
I have it unchecked.
Okay. if you go to your UV image editor and you click displacement, it shows up like this. Huh. Let's see. Okay, so for some reason it uses a displacement name actually. Your strength is way up, so I see that it actually displaces the
Texture? Yeah.
So that might be on me. Yeah, because I renamed this, so that's on me. But if you want, you can rename it displacement if you want, or just say it. All right.
This is inverted, of course.
Yeah. So we don't want it like this. This looks kind of ugly. We want the text coming out from the box and the rest of it flat. So let's fix that. We're going to change the strength to, I think, -1. And now you'll see that the text is coming out and the rest is flat. So again, strength on your displacement is -1. And the mid-level is going to go probably a fair bit down. Sorry, it's -0.1. If you put -1, it's going to be too strong. So -0.1 seems to be the sweet spot. Mid-level 0 for now, and that looks a lot better. Okay, clear one there. Awesome. Now we have our texture and we have our displacement. So we're going to have pretty nice looking mesh. If we go. No, don't render it because it'll probably take a lot of processing power. But do swap from Blender back to Cycles. We only did that because that seems to be the only way you can add a texture for some reason. But let's see when I render it. It looks pretty nice. We now have this nice edges to our what was pretty boring box. Alright, so we have a mesh, but now we need to add a material. We need to make it look shiny and pretty. For that, we're going to go down here to this window you should have open called the Node Editor. Does everyone have this window? It's basically just a grid for now, but we'll add stuff in. So if you don't have this window, split one window down here, and then select Node Editor. Alright, everyone have this set? You do? I'm not actually sure, but you can go to press Control-Alt-Z. And you should see like a yeah. Okay, so what this does is shows your whole history of all the stuff you do. The eyeball kind of represents what set you're at. So if you set 4, just set 4 and set back. So let's add material to our mesh. We're going to go over to, again, the properties window, and this little circle with a kind of checkbox on it. That's our material window. Does everyone see it? So we're going to go to the Material tab, and we're going to add a new material. All right, does everyone see that? All right, so that didn't really change much, but we'll see that if I change this color here, it's reflected in our object. It won't show up for you because it's probably not in rendered mode. If you want to see it, you can go to material mode. It's the same thing, it just doesn't have all the pretty lighting. And again, if you click the color, you can play around with the colors. But you also notice that this new, I guess, widget has popped up in our node editor. If you don't see it, you can scroll out really far and then just zoom in on it. So if it's blank, you can just zoom out and then zoom in. And to pan, it's the middle mouse button. So I can pan by clicking the middle mouse button and zoom out by the scroll wheel. All right, does everyone see this on their computer? Awesome. So what we're going to try and do is create a fairly realistic metal. Again, we're kind of creating this procedurally, meaning that computer is creating what it thinks looks like metal. Does that make sense? So it's not going to look exactly like metal, but it'll do just fine for now. So the easiest way to really create metal is to just delete this. So to delete an object, select it, or select a node, and then press X, and you'll notice our material disappears and it looks black because there's nothing assigned to it. And then if you want to add a new material, we press Shift-A like we would a regular object, and then Shader. So Shift-A, this little menu will pop up, and we can go down to Shader. And the shader we're looking for is glossy. Because metal generally has a sheen to it. And once you have this node and this node, you can connect them by clicking on this little dot and dragging to the surface. Right? Did everyone get that? And now you can see in our preview, we have a decent shader. It's kind of metally, kind of plastic. If you want it super shiny, you can turn the roughness way down. We have a super shiny metal ball. Or if you want kind of a plastic, it's kind of turn up the roughness. Yeah. Did you see the roughness slider here? So if you want it shinier, you just scroll that down. Oh, that's
You know, like, file will still, this one's giving you problems.
So my file just crashed, which is always fun. But I will just follow along with you guys. Let's see. Does anyone want to time me? See how fast I can do this?
Are you just showing off?
No, I need to catch up with you guys because mine just crashed. And while I'm doing this, if you guys want to play around with the materials, I highly encourage it because it's kind of like science almost. Just having fun and connecting materials to each other. So I'll show you that real quick. So again, if you want to connect materials, you just plug them into the surface. You can also mix materials. So if I go to shader, mix shader, I can plug two materials into each other, and I can create a completely different material. So now we see this kind of glossy porcelain material, which is really cool. And then I can play with each one of these. I can make it more rough, and it'll be reflected here. I can change the color of the glossiness, so only the glossy parts are blue, whereas the rest of the material is white.
Wait, how did you add the new texture?
The new shader, again, it's Shift A, like a regular object,
And then shader.
and then shader, and then whatever you want. There's a whole bunch of shaders here. So again, play around with it. There's an emission shader. That means it's going to produce light. I plug it in. You'll see a glow to your object. And you know, just have fun with it, I guess.
No, that part I get, but these are multiples of these now connected to
Right. If you want to mix two shaders, you can go to shader, mix shader.
Mm-hmm. Like what did you
So this green button to that green button.
so you can do multiples then?
Unless if you want like volume mode, if you want like I guess inner lighting, then you do.
But then for one replacing
How do you do two? It's not adding.
you can interconnect those.
Yeah, if you want
Okay,
two
you
shaders.
plug the one into the other somehow.
Yeah, so you need a specific node to mix two shaders. So you have to go add node. Okay, hold on. Oh, it's because I switched my render. Okay, so add node, Shift A, shader, mix shader. And that allows you to plug two into one. Right? Cool.
Oh, okay. Then you can plug multiple shaders in. Okay. Now I get it.
I got this right.
One of these sides getting,
think of that.
Okay. Cool.
5 minutes, not bad. All right, so we're gonna get back to making our somewhat realistic metal shader. So if you played around with it, you know you can adjust the color of the shader you want, right? Yeah, so he brings up a good point. What we're going to try and create today may be a little complicated, but that's what we're going for. You'll see that we have a whole bunch of interconnected nodes telling the other node what to do, and then finally get this nice surface, which should look fairly realistic. I'm not going to say it's photorealistic, because to get photorealistic, it's a lot more complicated. But you'll see that the metal has these little tiny. I'm running two instances of Blender, by the way, so that's why I'm confused. But you'll see, like realistic metal, this metal shader has these little divots and it like simulating scratches, right? So that's what we're going to try and go for today. Hopefully. It's giving me issues, so I'm just going to walk you through how I went about creating this shader. So, we're going to start out with a texture. So we saw textures before, but this one's going to be generated by the computer. And it's called a noise texture. Does anyone think they know what that looks like? Can imagine what that noise looks like?
It's white noise, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like that static almost that you see on TV when there's no signal. Let's see. So if I preview what that looks like, it's actually got color in it, but we don't really want that. So create a noise texture. You're going to go to today, texture, and then noise. Now create a new noise texture. notice that it has settings because it's generated by the computer. You can modify those settings. So for my settings, I have the scale at 50, the detail at 10, and distortion 5. Does everyone see that? And this just modifies how it looks. So but we don't want all this color, because ultimately what this texture is going to do is going to tell us where are our scratches on this metal. It kind of looks like scratches now, but not really. Scratches are much more distinct with this. So what we can do is create a new node called a color ramp. And so I'm just following along with what's on top here. So we have our texture. And then we have what's called the color ramp. You can either go to it by going to oh yes, I thought. So converter, color ramp, or you can just search for it, which is what I usually do. So should they, this top option allows you to search, and you can just say color ramp. And let's see. That if we plug this in to here, we plug the color value, or the color node of our noise texture into our color ramp, it turns it black and white. So that's a good start. We also want to squash some of these, some of this noise, I guess. We don't want all of these scratches, because then we have a super scratch node. We just want a couple scratches. So what we can do is take this darkest value and squash our values. So now we only see, a couple of little dings and dents. So we're taking these values in our color ramp and effectively creating more contrast between these noise pixels. So does everyone have that? Okay. If you want to view it, it might view it by default. You'll need to plug in your color from your color ramp all the way into this little node that says material output. You'll plug that into the surface. So that's how you do it. I have a add-on that allows me to just click on it and it will view it automatically. I'm not going to make you go through the process of installing that one, but if you want to do it manually, that's how you do it. You just take this little point and connect it all the way over here to your material output. So I'm not completely satisfied with this yet. I still think there's too many what will represent scratches, so I'm going to lighten this texture by pressing Shift A, color, and then mix RGB. And I like the mix shader that will mix two textures that we have. So right now we just have this noise texture, and we're mixing it with a white color. So to get that white color, you just click on the second color option and bring it all the way up to white. And by doing doing this, we're effectively filtering out the noise we don't want and the noise we do want. And then we're going to create another color ramp that we can attach to this color. So you can either shift A again and create color ramp from scratch, or you can click on your previous color ramp and press Shift D to duplicate it. Once you've done that, you can just kind of click it on the line and it will do it for you. So now we can see that our scratches are much nicer, I guess. They're fewer in between. We don't have as many of them. And I think it looks more realistic. I mean, it's kind of hard to picture now, but what the white spots represent are areas where the metal is not shiny, and the dark area represents where it is shiny. So if you look at a scratched metal, or even your phone glass, if you have scratches on it, the scratches are going to be more diffuse, which means like the wall diffuses light, and the glass or metal is going to be shiny. So that's basically what this texture does, is it tells the material which parts are shiny and which parts are diffuse. So we're pretty much done with that texture, and now we're going to create our materials. So as you know, we can create material by going to Shift A, Shader, and then we're going to want to select our diffuse. Right. So we have a diffuse. We don't really need to do much with it. And then we're also going to create a glossy. And that's going to represent our glass or metal. And then to mix these, we need to create a mix shader. And we're going to go ahead and mix them by connecting nodes like that. So, the big reason I like Blender is this whole node-based material system. It's a very visual way to represent things, whereas in other programs you might have to manually code aspects of the material. You can see it firsthand how it's going to look, right? So with that done, we have our mixing and our shaders here. But right now it's just going to mix them equally, right? So our factor of mixing, this is what this represents. It's 50-50. So half of it's going to be shiny or glossy, and half of it's going to be diffuse. However, if we plug in our texture that we created here to control which parts are glossy and which are diffuse, you can see that. Well, now that's not the best example, but here in our material preview, you can see that there are some shiny parts and some not so shiny parts. And it may be easier, in fact, to just change the color. So we'll see that our glossy parts are, hold on. Okay. So what we want here is for the white areas to represent our diffuse and our gloss parts to be black. The computer doesn't know that, so if it doesn't show up here, we just need to change it here. So the order does matter. And now we'll see that there are glossy areas that are white and diffuse areas that are yellow. Yeah, so here it's kind of small and kind of hard to tell, but you can see what will ultimately represent our scratches are yellow and the shiny parts are white. I'm going to change this to black because the scratches aren't really yellow, they're a darker color. Alright, see that here. And we go to render view. It'll take a while, but let's do it. But we can change that. If we want the scratches to be more visible, we can give them depth, because in reality, scratches are because you effectively took away part of the material and created a dent. And we can do that here as well. So by creating a bump map, by going Shift A, is vector, yes, Shift A vector, we create what's called a bump map. And this is similar to displacement, except it's not really displacing our mesh. It's just telling the renderer, okay, what parts are more shaded than others. So whereas this displacement pushes the mesh outward, the bump map just tells our material, okay, act like there's a ribbon there, even though there's not really. And we can plug this color from our scratches into our bump map, into the height node. And then we can plug. Yeah, I need to. And then once you have that, you can plug that into your normals. And you'll see over here our scratches become much more obvious because it's like the light is going into the scratches and not escaping as much. And it's you can see it here as well. So yeah, that's pretty much all there is to.
Oh, so all the purples connect, all the yellows connect, all the greens connect?
Not necessarily. You'll see that I have a color, which is yellow, going into a purple. And when you think about it, that's basically telling the computer, it will show up. It's basically telling the computer, okay, I want the light areas to represent divots in my material, and I want the dark areas just to be flat. Yeah, so that's what the computer sees. Doesn't really make a lot of sense to us, but when it renders it, we get a nice deep cut in our material where these spots are. Do you have any questions? In the actual model, we can see that not all the parts are silver, right? There's some parts that are gold. And do you guys want to do that? That's you.
Well, if you walk us through it.
Yeah, okay. I'll walk you guys through it. So again, we're effectively telling the computer, okay, what parts are gold and what parts are silver. And to do that, we can use the displacement texture we used before, right? The black parts are going to represent gold parts, and the white areas are going to represent silver. And to do that, we need to duplicate all this stuff we just created. In order to do that, we just press B. I'll bring up this little box, and we can select every node that we want to select. Once that's all selected, we can duplicate it with Shift D, and then, like we did before, we're just mixing the shaders, except one's going to be gold, one's going to be silver. So this is our silver shader with scratches. This is our gold shader with scratches. And we're going to mix them right here. We're basically taking two shaders, we're combining them, and then we're telling the computer, okay, where do I want one shader to be and where do I want the other shader to be? And we can use our image texture to determine that. So right now it's just 50-50. If we look at it, it's just going to mix the silver gold and give us a lighter gold color. However, if we plug in our texture to our factor, and find it here, it will tell which parts are gold and which parts are silver. And you'll see that this part's actually reversed. We want the font gold and the rest silver, so we just need to swap where each shade is going. And that's how it does. Yeah, that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. Oh, and if you want to render your work so you can save it as an image or whatever, the shortcut for that should be F12. So if I press F12 on my computer, you'll see that it starts to render that still shot of my image. What? On Mac, it should be function F12, hopefully.
So you just open a new window and then function.
Well, if you already have the UV window open, this is the UV window, which we were using earlier for our UV maps. It should just automatically render in that viewport. Oh, you have purple. Okay, that is one thing I did not touch on. Yeah. Okay, thanks for bringing that up. So, if you do try and render it and it comes out purple in the background, that's because you're missing your environment texture, and that basically tells your computer what the environment's supposed to look like, and that helps with reflections and stuff like that. And purple just represents a missing texture. So if you want to add a texture, you need to go to this World tab, which is next to this orange cube. Press New. Surface is going to be background, and actually, sorry, the surface is going to be background, and then your color is going to be an environment texture. And that will allow you to open up a texture for your environment. And I actually included a texture if you want to try it out for you guys to use. It's an HDRI texture, which means it's effectively 360. It covers your whole environment, and that's going to be under your textures folder. It's called Banded Slipway 4K HDR. Yeah, if it was purple before, you'd have to render it again. Is it still purple?
No. I got the image, but the texture that I added.
It's okay. I mean, trust me, it takes practice. I've been using Blender for, I want to say 3 years now. So you just kind of get a feel for things when things start to look realistic and when they don't.
So when you added all the texture, you had to specifically select the object that had the code and not the entire object that was attached to it.
What do you mean the object that had its code?
Well, okay, so I guess, can you go take a look at
Yeah.
it changed whatever texture I added, it changed the entire.
Yeah, that's not bad. Basically, you and your tool. So you have use
No, we just brought it. Well, they're the ones that we have with the Dell computers. Yeah.
Right? So the code sees out for the servers. You won't see the manually because you need more subdivisions. So when you render it again, it should not see
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can talk to Thelma if you want to do Python or something.
Yeah, I'll let him know, see if he has time, because he's been working.
I know, yeah, you've been super good. Eric. Eric,
Yeah.
you wanna come
Hey,
on?
I like this. This is already got done with my emergency. I'm already late, so I have to take
It's
them.
okay, man. That's
Anything
fine.
that I need to work on that you want us to bring on Thursday or like any projects?
You know what would be like, if you guys,
Yeah.
whenever you guys wanna do like a presentation or something.
Do we like to do the rendezvous logo?
Huh?
Yeah,
We like to do the rendezvous logo? Like on 3D?
That would
That'd be good.
great.
They have a start at the Rambo, they deliver.
Yeah, we deliver
But I bring any
groceries,
flyers.
restaurants, onboarding restaurants as well. Yeah, and we're local, like say
They're right here.
Uber Eats.
They're right next to.
So say when like Uber Eats, you want like contact management, like you don't have to kind of matter. To us, you just sign us up here. So we're good. You know,
Yeah, they're right
you don't have
there.
to go wait.
So you created the program and everything, and you're about.
Well, we have like we outsource the whole program. We can it's an idiot, but
Yeah.
Could you please tell me
yeah. No, hey, give me your number. We'll keep it in touch. It's all good.
Yeah, when I started
email
reading those
because
things.
I'm
Sure.
fixing for the I don't know when.
Oh, really?
But I'll be going.
Wait, Mario, can you send me the link to the stream? Just so I can show you
Oh, to this?
Yeah.
Hey,
I'm not sure.
Yeah, we're pretty done.
And my email address?
Yeah.